Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to the Awareness Magazine show. Tonight we have Lisa Kalmin and Lynne Sheridan, and they are both transformational trainers with over 50 years of experience between the two of them. We have interviewed them separately here on the show, but we decided we would do it as a team. So welcome, Lisa and Lynne.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you both,
so
too. Yes, thank you. Yay. So please tell our audience how you two met, how you got into business together, and little past history.
Well, Lynne actually did the trainings that I was supporting and managing in Washington, D.C. in the early 90s. And she was an amazing student, and we just clicked, and we have a similar stand and commitment to people. And we really complement each other and work well together, and it's been a, long journey of blessings, and so grateful to be able to work with somebody who is thinking and living the same way. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, and talk a little bit about, you work with entrepreneurs and
We do.
teams.
We work with different companies. We work with CEOs. We do executive coaching. We work with small business owners, leadership teams. When we can go into an office, a business, and impact the executive team, the whole culture of the company shifts.
Yeah.
And when the culture shifts, the results shift.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We love startups too, working with startups. And we've really learned that if we can shift the paradigm, the way of looking at the organization, at their own lives, shift the culture, break out of the box, so to say, then it kind of goes all the way through the organization. Whether the organization has 10 people or 10,000 people, we can make that kind of difference there.
That's great. That's great. Give the audience an example of how you would do a paradigm shift. How would that come about? Just so, because not everyone knows what that is. So I'll let you.
Absolutely. You want to talk about ontology?
Ontology, yeah.
What we work on is we do ontology. And ontology is the study of being, who we are as a human being. And so there are certain ontological conversations we're born into our thinking, no matter where we are on the planet. And so what we're doing is working inside out. Rather than a lot of training companies come in and are working on skill sets, we're working on how does somebody see their life, how do they see the world, how do they see and relate with other people. And then first we are showing them that. So it's holding up a mirror, then having them look at linguistics, because our language shows how we have the world, how we see the world. And then when they can see it, does that line up with the person I'm committed to being? Does it not line up? And shift it accordingly.
Right. We use a pretty basic formula that many people who've studied any kind of self-development, transformation know about. It's be, do, have. So we all want certain results. And we all want certain experiences, whether it's success in our business, connected relationships, and then we take actions to achieve that. Well, if we back up to who are we being, what are the qualities we're accessing, and we begin to shift it from there, everything else shifts. It's like the pie shape, when we shift beingness, boom, it has a multifaceted effect in all areas of life. So, as Lynne was saying, many corporations work on skill-based and strategy. And we really work on when we shift the beingness of the top tier of the organization, it shifts the entire experience of everybody in it.
For everybody.
Another way, for me, an analogy I sometimes use, we can give a hammer and a nail, or a hammer and a chisel to different people. Those are great tools, but depending on the person using the tools, we're going to have different results.
Right.
We may have
different.
Michelangelo's David, or we can have Charles Manson. There are different usages for the tool, and so we want to work on the person that is using the tool.
Right, and get them shifted.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And inside out, let's talk about inside out more. So you do that with an individual?
Yeah.
You do it, that's more of a one-on-one versus with a whole company?
It's one-on-one and a company. I wanna
Okay.
say.
It's both.
It's
Okay.
layered. So when we're working
Yeah.
with a company, first, a lot of times people, they work with people, and they've worked with people for years and years, longer than their marriages have lasted. And they don't know the most basic things about that person. So a lot of the work we do is our basic personality is formed when we're 0 to 8 years old.
Okay.
And so through all the things that impacted us, our family, our culture that we grew up in, amount of money in the house, whatever it is. And that's what shapes our paradigm. And so all those things we carry into life in our work environment, in our lives today. And so a lot of the time, if people are starting to reveal some of what they're thinking, where they got their thinking, then they can understand each other better, connect at a different level. So we have the individual's paradigm, and then we have the corporate paradigm,
Right.
or the company paradigm. And
Yeah.
that's fascinating.
Yeah, each company has its own unique culture.
Yeah.
And we know this. If you go to Nordstrom's, you have a very different experience than if you go to JCPenney.
Right.
And yes, the merchandise might be different, but there's a complete experience that's different. And
Yes.
so the company has an already existing culture, and the current leader or the current CEO either adopts it or attempts to shift it.
Okay.
And so we can walk in there and work with the top tier again of the organization and start to shift the entire culture, because we're from the outside and we can see what they can't see.
Right.
It's a little bit like taking a fish out of its own water. You know, the fish itself is like, doesn't realize it's in water. Take a fish out, they're like, I'm in water, and now I'm not. And
Yeah.
so we can actually pull them out long enough so they can actually see what's working, what's not working, and what could be some major shifts and additions.
Changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredibly rewarding too, because
Yeah.
it isn't just at work. When we work with executive teams, it ends up everywhere in their life. So oftentimes they'll need to tell their husband or wife, hey, I'm in this for the next 3 days because when I come home I may be different. And they're definitely different.
Yeah.
Their kids comment, their husbands, wives comment.
Yeah, it's
They're infiltrating into every area of their life.
a life shift.
It's making everything better.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one of the key principles we work with people is what we call a WinWin strategy. And we were all talking a little bit earlier about conscious businesses. And I think the distinction about conscious businesses, they're not looking only to achieve their own profits. They're looking at, how do I support the whole of the community, my employees, their lives. And so we actually do a very powerful process where people wake up to, are they operating from a win-lose strategy, which is pretty much the common cultural conversation. If I'm going to win, you have to lose. Rather
Sad.
than what's possible when we both can win.
Right.
And achieving results for everybody that are actually bigger than they would be in a win-lose strategy.
Getting rid of the competition mentality, which doesn't work.
Yes. And
Doesn't
the
work.
work we do is so distinct for corporations, because a lot of the time, and business owners,
Yeah.
because a lot of the time it's heady when they bring in trainers or trainings. It's heady. It's sitting and taking notes. Everything we do is experiential.
We don't own a PowerPoint presentation.
Good.
We don't do no. We are working with human beings. It is experiential, and so oftentimes, and we do extensive preparation, because sometimes they are not prepared. They're expecting to be sitting behind a table taking notes instead of, no, we're going to be engaged.
Jumping in.
We're like riding a bike. We want to be able to get on the bike 10 years from now and know how to ride it, not up here learning embodied.
Right.
Right.
Right. And you two get to go around the world and train.
Yeah, we get to. Yeah, we get to do this in many places.
How
It's really-
fun.
it's
That's
really
great.
fun.
Definitely privileged. I've been spending a couple months this year in Kuala Lumpur, and I got to be there during their pivotal election this year and impacting the people in that culture, because the majority of the people who were volunteering at the polls were people who had done the work that we do, that wanted to impact their nation and shift over, and so it's really neat to see it.
And every
show
culture
up.
is different too.
Yes.
They're all so
Yeah.
very different. You know, I was just thinking of an example of somebody we worked with, and when we went in there, when we talked to the CEO, and this was an example of their paradigm, he said, well, this person and this person aren't getting along. It's been a nightmare. It's been going on forever. You know, if you could make any difference with them, then this would be worth it. And through the process and through the work we did in the coaching we did with them, it's a complete turnaround. We actually coached this executive, and he's like, they're like chums. You know?
He came back
that's
two
great.
months. He said, and we said, how's it been going implementing this, and what are you seeing with the leadership team? And he said, you know what? I can't really say what we did in that room. I can't say exactly how you did what you did, but the whole team is different. Everybody is connected, and there has not been any problem. They're going to lunch together, those two guys now.
They're really on the
That's
same page
wonderful.
about achieving the company results.
Yeah.
And that's really what both of them wanted.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what I find, and I think Lynne finds this, is that everybody wants the same outcome. It's how do we get there together. So we
That's
love
a
it.
team.
It's really fun.
And we all have a
Yeah, fun
unique way
team.
of approaching things. Yeah. So
joyful.
appreciating each other's approach.
Yeah, that's a neat success story, and I'm sure you have many. And you're both authors. You've
Yes.
books coming out, and it's
Yeah.
great. And then, so you were from Wisconsin, part of your life, and you're from Texas,
I am.
originally. And you had mentioned to me once the difference in Colorado and Houston.
At the time, I was working for an investment company, and they similar economic situations in the this is in the 1980s, and how the people in my Texas office were applying their work was awful. It was really hard. The other folks in Denver were actually winning. They were extraordinary, and they had all done this paradigm work, and so the complete same economic conditions, completely different results, and that was great. And
That's interesting.
Yeah. I often talk about Texas having its own paradigm. They think Texas thinks it's its own country still.
I still work for a company in Washington, D.C., and that is a completely different paradigm.
I bet.
Even in California from Washington, D.C., radically distinct. And then there's something called inside the Beltway and outside the Beltway. And meaning if you're right in the capital, the power hub, and I work with a lot of congressional, that's its own thinking.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, yes.
And one of the things that we really love to do is work with people about the power of being responsible. Now, because culturally, responsibility often sounds like accountability, meaning I've got to do something, or blame because I did something wrong, versus the opportunity for an entire, especially in a corporate environment, to be responsible for the whole win, for everybody to win. Now, my accountabilities might be different. If I'm the CEO, it's different than if I'm the chief financial officer. But who we are together responsibly can really empower a team. And we take that and really shift that paradigm, the way they look at responsibility, and it becomes very freeing for them.
That's wonderful. That's great. Well, thank you both for being here. It's a pleasure, and great information, wonderful work. And tell the audience the name of your company together again.
Inspire Business Success.
Inspire Business Success. So thank you for tuning in, and have a lovely evening. See you next time. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.